So I'm honored to be here with Coach Jerry Dechert, Tivy tennis coach for many years, from Junction, Texas originally. And Coach, if you don't mind, maybe tell us a little bit about your growing up and how you got involved in tennis. And
Okay. Well, I lived a block and a half from the high school tennis courts. My parents would go up there and hit around a little bit, and the family best friend was the high school tennis coach / high school principal,
what was his name?
Sherman Rhymes.
Okay.
As an aside, he had more state champions to his name than anybody else in high school tennis history in Texas.
Wow. I did not know that.
Everybody thought the Mason coach,
Yeah. Right.
the first year that they had the Coaches Hall of Fame, Texas Tennis Coaches Association, Coaches Hall of Fame, we inducted, I think, 5 coaches. And when the Mason guy gets up there, he's the second to last and introduces Helen Talent.
Yeah.
And this is when Mason had been winning lots of state championships in their class. Anyway, Mason gets up there and makes their statement about how many state championships Helen had won. And hey, I'm not knocking her. Man, she was unbelievable. Mason is still a tennis town because of her. But Mason and Junction had been in the same district forever. And back when I was in high school, Mason was no competition because Helen hadn't come on the scene yet.
Okay.
But anyway, I talked about he ended up saying, I don't know of anybody who's ever won more state championships than Helen Talent. And that was, the award given, and everybody clapped and everything. And then it was my turn at the podium. And I said, I love you Mason folks to death, but the last man we're inducting today, my high school tennis coach, Sherman Rhymes, has won, I think it was like 8 or 10 more state championships than Helen Talent.
Wow.
And I mean, the room got quiet. Nobody had heard of Sherman Rhymes.
Yeah.
He was one of these people who stayed in the background at all times. He didn't associate with other coaches. He just took his players to tournaments and kicked their butts.
He recruit you or?
No, it was just sort of natural. I hit around on the school courts for a bit, and some of my friends were. So in 7th grade, after football, we started playing tennis. And Sherman would show up out there from time to time, give us some pointers. And by my 8th grade year, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
So this would have been, what, in the sort of mid-50s?
The late 50s. Well,
yeah.
Bobby and I won state in doubles in 1960 and 61.
Okay. I knew you had in 60. Okay. What was his last name?
Bobby Neal.
Bobby Neal. Okay.
Now, the crazy thing it was, we knew we had accomplished something, but it wasn't something that special. Because I had a classmate who won state 4 years in a row.
Really?
Freshman through senior. First boy in Texas to do that.
Wow.
And there was a girl behind me in class who won state in girls singles 4 years in a row.
Wow. I had a kid I grew up with who did that at Nueces Canyon. Yeah, but I hadn't realized it had been done before. I think he was only whatever it was, A division back then. So, yeah. Wow.
Anyway, one state twice. Well, that's pretty good.
Okay.
And then I got into coaching and realized how tough it really was.
So you won in 60 and 61, and did you guys just go right through?
Our junior year in the state finals, we met a team from West Texas that were the reigning state champions. And back in those days, there were no tiebreakers, regular scoring, 5-set matches, 3 out of 5. And we went all 5 sets.
Yeah, I remember my dad telling me about that.
And the shortest set was 6-4.
This must have been like a 4-hour match.
It was a 4-hour match. We got on the court at 8 and got off at 12:15.
Wow.
Holding the whole state finals up, because we were supposed to be off that court for somebody else to finish theirs.
So that was in the finals?
Uh-huh.
That must have been an incredible sense of accomplishment to win a marathon like that.
Yes, we were shaking afterwards. I guess we were shaking during it too.
And then the next year, was that easier path?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Next year was pretty much a cakewalk.
Yeah, because back then it was different when I played, but you had to win everything. You couldn't lose a district match in the tournament or a regional.
Nope, it was single elimination and single representation.
My dad used to give me a hard time about that. Maybe we'll get to that later.
Yeah. I can believe that.
Yeah. That was your senior year in 61, correct?
Right.
Okay. And did you go on and play in college or want to play, or you were more, I just want to be a coach?
I played for Schreiner, 62.
And was it a junior college at that point?
It was a junior college.
Okay.
And we brought back their first national championship. I was number 3 on that team.
I didn't know. Yeah, and this was before the influx of foreign players, right?
So, yeah.
Who was your coach? One of our neighbors, Dudley Rogers, I think, took over later. I think he might have won one as well. But
he won. Yeah, he won 2 or 3.
Yeah. Okay.
But a lot of his players didn't speak English.
Yeah, I remember. I think he had some Japanese players, if I recall. My dad would take me out there and I'd watch him. Remind me, did you play singles and doubles back then, or how did that work? Okay.
Well, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I was number 3 slot in singles and 2 slot in doubles.
That's incredible. You're just a winning machine.
Well, we was brung up that way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is like the Harry Hopman days, right? That was the yeah. So after Shrine, you did 2 years there?
Just one.
Just one. Okay.
Interesting story. How can I make this politically correct? The tennis coach and the president of the college both taught Bible.
Okay.
And the president of the college did not like the way the tennis coach taught Bible.
Okay.
So he was invited not to come back the next year. And the program folded.
Really?
Yeah.
They just ended it?
Yep.
I had no idea. So you would have stayed another year?
Oh, yeah. Easily.
Oh. So when that happened...
My college coach was Lawrence Becker.
Yeah, he was a good friend of my dad's.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Used to see him in the Austin. He played at UT, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
He coached the women's team at UT for a while.
Yeah.
After he left Schreiner.
Okay.
And was another spot or 2.
Okay. So he was the coach, and they shut down, and then he left and went on. And so did you try to follow him, or?
No. I was in love. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't get in. We couldn't get housing to get into Southwest Texas State. So we went to San Angelo Junior College for 1 year.
Okay.
And I was not allowed to play there back in that day.
Oh, you couldn't transfer?
I couldn't transfer. So when we got, after that, I finished up my last 2 years at Tarleton.
Okay.
And played for Tarleton those years.
A good team there?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I was having to play too high on the ladder for my skill set.
Would that have been NAIA or...
Probably.
And so you finished, you graduated, and got a degree in education or teaching certificate? History. Okay, that's right.
Teaching. I didn't graduate. I got out in 4 years, but I didn't graduate until August of that 4th year.
Okay.
And my 3 top choices for where to go was Austin, Kerrville, and Fredericksburg. Neither one of them were going to give me the time of day because they wanted to make sure they had somebody who was graduating. Stands to reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my first year of teaching was in Elgin, Texas.
Okay.
The junior high level. And having played junior high football.
So we're about 1965?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got to be the junior high football coach and basketball coach and track coach.
This sounds like my dad's story. Yeah.
Oh, and I won't even go into those details.
Yeah.
Wow. At that time, Elgin was very, very low income.
Okay.
The main business was making bricks.
Okay.
And that doesn't take a lot of skilled labor.
Yeah.
Donna was the junior high school secretary. So we were on the same campus.
Okay.
And we felt like it was our year in the Peace Corps.
Oh, wow.
Because we feel like we made a difference in some kids' lives that may not have otherwise.
Yeah, okay. So you met her at Tarleton, is that right? And then, or no. You met her in Elgin?
My wife?
Yes.
No, I met my wife in high school.
And so you got married while you were at Tarleton?
Yeah, between our junior and senior year.
Okay.
I was ready to get married way before that.
Okay.
And she wouldn't marry me until she knew I was going to finish college.
Okay, right.
In other words, she was the mature one of the two.
Yes. Okay. And so then you were just at Elgin 1 year, or
just 1 year?
Okay.
Came to Tivy. Was hired as a history teacher, and when I talked to Mr. Blanton, I just mentioned, I said, Mr. Blanton, if Tivy needs a tennis coach, I'd like to coach tennis.
Wow, so you didn't you weren't brought in
to
initially?
Coach tennis?
Yeah.
No, I was a history teacher.
And did they have a coach at the time?
No, not really. That's part of the story.
Okay.
Anyway, Mr. Blanton just shuts me off, says, we have a coach. Oh, yes, sir. If you knew Mr. Blanton, you knew.
Yes.
That was it.
Yeah, he went to our church.
No arguing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I love the man.
Yes.
But, boy, I feared him whenever I was under him at Tivy. But anyway, second semester, my first year at Tivy, Ed Windebank was the assigned tennis coach. And I went out there and I asked him, at that time, there were very many people adults to play tennis with here in town.
Yeah.
And I didn't know them.
Yeah.
So I asked if I could come hit with the team once in a while. He said, well, yeah, come on. And I was out there, and Ed quickly realized I knew what I was doing. So he said, if you have any advice to give these kids, please feel free, because I was assigned this job. I do not know anything about tennis. So I kind of unofficially helped out that year. And during the spring of that year, Coach Farrington, the athletic director, Coach Farrington catches me in the hall and says, "Jerry, have you ever thought about coaching tennis?" I said, "Well, yeah, Coach Farrington. I even asked Mr. Blanton if you had a tennis coach, and he said you did, so I dropped it." He rolled his eyes and says, "Well, I can't promise you very much money, but you can consider yourself the tennis coach for next year."
Wow. And the previous coach, how long had he been there?
Coach Windebank?
Yeah.
Not many years.
Okay. Did he?
And that might, like I say, that was an assignment during off season for him.
Yeah. Okay. And you knew my dad, right? Or knew of him? Okay.
I knew.
I think my dad left in '60, I believe, but he had several players who, carried on and won state championship
Both
in '61.
Brown.
Exactly. Again, so there was a little legacy there that continued, but then I know there was a drop off, and that's where, for me, I'm not sure of the details.
My first association with your father, I was either in 8th grade or a freshman, and Junction came over for a Tivy tournament. And of course, he was the tournament director. And he just ran everything so smoothly. And of course, he never got flustered. I've never seen him flustered in my life. He always even keel, even playing tennis on the court.
I think my brother and I might have flustered him when he was out trying to teach us, and we were kids fighting all over the court. But that's another story.
But anyway, that's when I first met Lee Burton. Always, in fact, when I was inducted into the Tivy Athletic Hall of Fame, they came to me and talked to me about it, and I said, "I can't give you an answer until you answer a couple of questions for me." "Well, what's that?" I said, "Has Charlie Dobbs been inducted yet?" "Yes, he has." "Has Lee Burton been inducted yet?" "Yes, he has." I said, "Okay."
Wow.
I wasn't going to go in before either one of them.
Wow.
I mean, those are two great, great men.
Wow. Well, my dad, he got started when Tommy Daniels, I believe senior, I'm not sure, gave him a racket, but, encouraged him to start playing. And I think he might have given him a couple rackets. My dad had a good friend, Tom Hurd, and they grew up together. His mom was actually my piano teacher, Kate Hurd. And there was nobody in town that played other than them growing up, so they didn't have a coach. And I don't think Tommy Daniels knew a lot about the game, but he got them started.
Created the interest.
Exactly, and so they kind of took it upon themselves. Of course, you didn't have, certainly didn't have YouTube, much less, wasn't any TV back then, and there was the Pro Tour, but that wasn't swinging through Kerrville. Later on, my dad caught it, in the 50s and 60s. But, yeah, that was a different era. And so they just kind of taught themselves, and they ended up making it to the state finals their senior year in doubles. And, of course, again, that was back when there was no of the taking two out of the district or region to the state. So they won the district and the region, and then they got to state. And back then, I think it was played on the UT courts, which were clay, and they really hadn't played on clay before. So they got to the finals, I think, and they lost I think it was actually made the semifinals. But anyway, they lost the first set 6-love because they couldn't move on the stuff. But then they kind of started figuring it out, and I think, as you were saying, no tiebreakers. They lost the second set, I think, 12-10. Anyway, but that's where his love for the game started. And then, yeah, he went to, out of school, he got a coaching job at Lockhart. Similar thing, was coaching junior high football and I think basketball and doing tennis, teaching math and physics. And then he jumped on the chance to come to Kerrville, and then, started kind of the tennis team, the first coach. And his thing, which I know you're a big believer in, was, he tried to get these kids started young, 7th, 8th grade, junior high. And, of course, they had those old courts back there, which were in pretty bad shape, but, it's what he had to work with. And so, you had to start developing these line of players. And I know he didn't want to leave. We had a family business, insurance agency, and my granddad had died, about, it would have been about 13 years earlier, and my uncle had taken it over for a while, and then he got called up back in the service. Somebody else took over, and anyway, my grandmom needed somebody to run it, so my dad, left the teaching and coaching profession, which I know he really missed, but we got a great handoff to you a few years later. So I know he felt really good about that legacy wasn't, lost, because Kerrville wasn't really a tennis town prior to that. Yeah. Junction would have been definitely more one, and the Kothmans, and yeah. So, okay, so you got the baton and you said, yes, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, my first full year of coaching tennis, I thought I was going to win a state championship with the boys doubles team.
Really?
Yes.
This would have been what year? 67?
67.
Okay.
Andy Price and Bill Stacy.
Okay.
They were good players, and I whipped them into a doubles team that was formidable. East Central High School was in our district.
Oh, they were tough.
They had state champions.
Yeah, what was the coach's name? He had a whole line of players. And that one family had like 9 players.
Cecil Vasquez.
Okay, yeah.
And the Reischubers.
The Reischubers, thank you. Yeah.
Anyway, Cecil was coaching, and he had one of the Reischubers and a kid with the last name Miller and Reichuber. And we met up with them in the finals of the Uvalde tournament, and my boys beat them. We met up with them in the finals of the Tivy tournament, and my boys beat them. And beat them pretty solidly.
Yeah.
Considering they were state champions.
Oh, they were they had been the previous year?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And so Cecil pulls the Reichuber boy out of doubles and puts him in singles because, that's a write-off, and that was single representation again.
Right. Yeah, you had to choose one or the other, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But there were no second teams.
Yeah.
To
right.
represent.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Anyway, he pulled the Reichuber kid out. Reichuber boy was a senior. Lee Jennings was a freshman. And he knew he could beat Lee Jennings.
Okay.
The Gary Reichuber had brothers who were twins, I guess is the best way to put it. And they were freshmen. So he pulls one of them up and puts him with the Miller boy for district. and I don't remember the scores, but they meet in the finals. We won the first set, something like 6-2, and we're up 3-1, 4-1 in the second set. Oh, we got up to 5-something with them, like 5-2 maybe. And I was the tournament director, and one more game to go, and we're serving. We got this one. We're going to regional. And those two East Central kids pulled back to the baseline, and every shot they hit was a skying lob.
Yeah.
I hadn't coached my kids how to play against that. We were hitting tennis balls.
Yeah, right.
We weren't lobbing.
Yeah.
Well, East Central won state that year.
Wow. So he broke up a state champion team, created a new one, and they won again.
Yep.
Wow. Boy, that must
And they won the singles too that year. Gary Reishuber won the singles, and Reishuber and Miller won in doubles.
That must have been a hard pill to swallow.
It was a very humbling experience. I mean, it was like, you think you're going to walk in here and just start having state champions? Here's reality. Here's what life is really all about.
Yeah, and that was sort of maybe just before, but the whole tennis boom was about to kick in, or was kicking in, and a lot more people playing, and schools getting bigger and tougher competition. So that was 67. Where did it go from there?
Both Andy and Bill were seniors, so they graduated. And Lee Jennings became my number one player. And suddenly my girls' team was developing. And I had a doubles team of Liz Price and Mary Beth Lehman that were beating everybody around us. Oh, and that was the first year for double representation in district.
Oh, okay. So you could put up a couple of teams.
Yes. And Liz Price and Mary Beth Lehman were a formidable team. And my second team was Edie Price, who was a year older than Liz, and Bonnie Pickens. That wasn't a bad little doubles team. It just it wasn't really on the same level as Price and Lehman.
Okay.
Well, we get in the district finals and we meet each other. And Edie Price and Bonnie Pickens win. And only one goes to regional.
Right. Yeah.
Two, you can enter two in district, but only one team goes to regional.
Wow.
So my best team sat it out. They came back, and, Liz Price and Mary Beth Lehman came back and were state finalists for me the next 2 years. There was one team in West Texas that it didn't matter what classification. We went out and played Highway 80. I took kids out there and all over. And if that little West Texas team wasn't there, we would win.
Yeah.
But if it was there, we were.
Where were they from? San Angelo or?
No.
I know there's some
Much smaller.
Okay.
Much smaller town. I can't remember.
I know West Texas had some really good players.
Yeah, from some really small towns.
Yeah. So wait, 2 more state finalists. There had been some fine girls before that. My dad had several. Martha Arneke was the best.
Fletcher and Arneke.
Yeah, and Fletcher was the other one, the 2 Marthas. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because you would have been playing in high school at that time. Yeah.
Junction and Tivy played together a lot. Bo and Kelby needed good competition.
Mm-hmm.
Greer needed good competition. He'd load them up and Your dad would load them up,
Yeah.
and hook them over to Junction.
Because you played him, right? You.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
It was.
Bet those were some battles.
Bobby and I beat Bo and Kelby. I don't know how many times we played, but we beat them maybe 2 out of 5 times.
Yeah, so very competitive.
So this was a really good competition.
Wow.
And then Bo would get pulled out of the doubles to play Greer in singles.
Yeah. Okay.
Bo was a good player. Greer beat him, but Bo was a good player.
Yeah.
And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, Bo and Greer teamed up at Texas Tech, and I think won conference.
Yeah, I know he did win conference.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, they did at Texas Tech. Yeah.
His partner was Greer Kovman.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
They were good friends, played together in the summer
Yeah,
tournaments.
okay. Wow, that's a great pairing. Wow, what a tennis extended community, the small towns in this area.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you had 2 girls that would have been what, like 68, 69 that they made the finals?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I think Lee Jennings, his senior year, did really well. He made it to state, right?
Yeah. Have to look at something here.
Sure.
Oh, I got
I'll hold that.
a shoulder that's not working right after I fall.
I remember him kind of telling me the story of him getting that far. Yeah, I know you're looking at articles here. This must have been, I don't know if these are articles my dad saved or, but I remember Lee telling me the story. I think when he made it to state and the semifinals, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He made it to the
And I think the Southwest Texas coach, now Texas State, but we're so impressed, he kind of came out of nowhere and they offered him a scholarship on the spot, I believe. And I think he elected to go to UT instead.
Yes. He had to go to UT. He had to go to UT.
Yeah.
Lee Jennings made it to the semis in 69. Price and Lehman were 70 and 71 state finalists.
And that was during the era they were winning state in basketball, so there was just some great athletes in the school.
Winning, getting into the playoffs, winning district in football, getting into the playoffs, winning state in basketball.
You would have been colleagues with Jim Reed, obviously, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's a legend. Yeah.
There were 3 years, 73, 74, and 75, I didn't get anybody to state.
Okay.
And 76 and 77 were girls doubles. Cynthia Prince and Nan Nugent were state finalists for me twice.
Now, you told me a story once, and maybe it was one of them, someone else, but I remember we were playing and, you win a difficult match, something, everybody, thinks, oh, I toughed it out, I'm gritty. And I remember you kind of set us in our place and you were like, no. Toughest competitor I ever seen gritting something out was one of your girls who I think had a really bad blister or something.
This would have been...
So it was a doubles match?
No, it was singles.
It was singles. And so was that in a district match he was playing?
Yes.
Bleeding all over the court?
Oh my gosh. You can't imagine what her feet looked like. And she knew if she could win that match, we would win the district championship.
Right. Which back then, the team competition was not separate from the individual. It was all rolled together, right? So it was a big deal, both on a personal and a team level.
Right.
What was the girl's name who was injured?
Kathy Ayers.
Okay.
Bonnie Ayers' little sister, Ayers and Schoenberg, state finalist for me.
Okay.
And Kathy was out there on her own, hitting for the fun of it for years. And finally came to me her senior year and said, "Coach, can I come out for the team?" Well, yeah, Kathy. I can't guarantee you anything. And being a senior, if you don't make the top
Yeah.
6 in varsity, you'll have to change classes.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do is just play, have a chance. She ends up my number 1 singles player that year.
Wow.
And she was playing against an East Central girl who won state sometime or another, I guess, after her.
Okay.
But she met up with Kathy in the semifinals, I think. It may have been finals.
This is sort of mid-70s?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She was limping around on the court. The whole team was there cheering her on, man. This is East Central again.
Yeah.
And we had won the district championship a number of years in a row, which always before he'd been East Central, so a pretty good rivalry going there. And anyway, during that match, I saw Kathy limping really badly. And I said, "What's wrong, Kathy?" She said, "My feet are killing me." I said, "Well, we can take a medical timeout." She pulls her shoes off and pours bloody water out of them.
Whoa.
I mean, literally pours it out of her shoe.
And of course, this is back when shoes were canvas, right?
Exactly.
You had very little insole padding, and
That's right.
your socks are sticky, so they're sticking to the insole, which means your feet are sliding and your skin's catching, and yeah, it could all go wrong in a hurry.
Well, I looked at her feet and I said, "Kathy, you've done everything you could, everything I could ask of you and more. Let's get you off the court and take care of those feet right, Coach."
And this is the finals?
I think so.
Yeah.
And he said, "Coach, you gave me the chance to play my senior year. And I'm not going to walk now."
Wow.
And she beat the girl.
Wow.
How, I don't know.
That's some courage.
Toughest kid I ever knew.
Wow.
Got some state champs in here that you might have heard of. Arnke and Wiggins.
Yeah.
Arnke and Fletcher.
Yeah.
Sutherland and Brown.
Yeah.
Alcorta and Van Hooser.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, they had, when my dad, I guess that was when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, it wasn't just him, it was his teams. Yeah, which is fitting. And most of them showed up. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think one of them may have been Alcorta's, living up in Seattle, Washington, I think, area, and came all the way down. And, yeah, back then, of course, as you know, in my era, this had already started to change, but a lot of these kids were sports stars. Yeah. And, you know, today it would be almost unheard of to play football and tennis, but back then the Browns did and several other kids. Yeah. And, it just wasn't, nobody thought that was a big deal.
Well, I had one kid, I can't remember the years, but He played basketball and tennis. Let's see. I think he won state champ. Yeah, his name was Lee Burton.
No. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll get to that maybe in a minute. I ditched the basketball a few years. I loved it, but anyway.
Bonnie Ayers and Tommy Lee Schoenberg. They were state finalists for him.
So at this point, you've had a number, 3 or 4, or maybe more, state finalists, but haven't been able to get over the last hump. And we're in mid-70s now, and I know you still have, because at this point I'm a kid playing, and so I see some of these high school kids,
Yeah.
and you know they're very good players. And then you have another couple players that come along, and I know you had one in particular who seemed like a shoe-in.
Yeah, that was 78, Russ Angell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Russ was... Russ was the most talented player I think I ever coached.
That's saying something.
Well, in 78, I was chosen to coach the Texas Junior Davis Cup team at Nationals.
Okay.
And I had all, the very best 16 and 18-year-old boys in Texas. And Russ wasn't on the team. His sometimes doubles partner in the summertime, who ended up winning state that year, who Russ beat in regional and the Tivy tournament.
Was this one of the Schneider kids?
Yes.
Yeah, their dad was the UT
Doug
coach,
Snyder.
Doug Schneider.
Doug Snyder. Dave Snyder was the UT coach. Well, Doug and Russ were good friends, but Russ beat him just about every time they played that senior year.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about that, and the president of Texas Tennis Coaches Association just volunteered one day, said, well, Russ would be on here, but he's in Europe playing for Nukes, European Junior Squad.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was ranked, He was, of course, his mom was a huge tennis advocate and very involved in the Kerrville Tennis Association. I think might have been president at some point. And
anyway, he didn't make it because he got a bad case of the flu during state tournament.
Yeah, was that the semifinals or finals? He played Schneider again, right?
No, he didn't get to Snyder. In his quarterfinal match, he beat a kid while he was throwing up through the backstop.
I remember hearing about that.
And it was one of the most hot and humid state tournaments we had. And had to come back that afternoon
And play another.
to play another one. And at that time, UIL got the grand idea that they were going to let UT PE majors run the state tournament.
Wow.
And in the semifinals, Russ was just being hooked terribly. I mean, we're talking Russ could hit a ball in by a foot on the baseline, and the kid was calling it out
Junior tennis.
because he saw how sick Russ was.
Yeah.
And Russ didn't have he didn't even know he was being hooked like that.
Wow.
He was barely standing.
Just taking advantage of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I go into the desk and I said, man, we got to have a line judge out there. I'm sorry, Coach. The player has to ask for it.
That was the rule. I remember that. Wow.
So I said, he's too sick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Well, can you just put somebody out there on the court?
Yeah.
Nope. Player has to request it. Well, anyway, the kid beat Russ, got to Doug Snyder in the finals, and got beat something like 6-2, 6-1.
Yeah.
Doug just walked through it.
So healthy, Russ is clearly the best player. And,
Yes.
And likely would have won. Yeah.
I'm not going to say
No.
it was a shoe-in because they were close.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact,
You know all about that.
that's another.
Yeah.
That would be 1983.
Yeah. Well, Lorica, and I think along that time too, if I remember correctly, you had another one of the, maybe could make the case, the best athlete Tivy's ever had, is John Chambers played. And of course was a incredible basketball player. And I think his freshman year or something, he came out in one district. I think he was in the maybe same class or a year later than Russ.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then decided he didn't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
And I know right when I was getting out of high school the year before, I was a senior, I'd play with him when he transferred to Schreiner and played basketball. He hadn't been playing years, and he was playing me tough as nails and winning some of the time.
He was
Clearly a better athlete than I was.
He may have been the best athlete to ever go through Tivy.
Yeah.
Because he could pick up any sport, and he was great at it.
I remember watching him score 27 points in the first quarter one time. But we'll maybe that's another podcast with one of the basketball coaches. But so that takes through about 79. But then, right on the heels of that, you had a whole nother crop of great players starting to come up, because now I'm in junior high at this point, and you're seeing these kids at tournaments, and let's see, about that time they separated the individual from the team competition,
right,
around 1980 or something like that, 81.
I'm not sure exactly what year it was. I'd have to look that up.
Okay. Well, I what I recall anyway, and correct me if I'm off on this, but my brother had played tennis, and he opted for the basketball route as well, and he got out, he graduated in 81, and I believe I was 4 years behind him, so I didn't start high school till the next year. But I know the year before I got there in 81, I remember you had such a good team. Of course, for whatever reason, tennis does as no other sport does, but they combine the girls and the boys and calculating all the scores, probably because the mixed doubles way back when. But they had I believe they got second in state in the team competition.
Yep.
And I know some of those players. Brian Reisinger was one of them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have a shoe-in. I can't remember whether Brian was roughly Russ Angell's age or Drew Crocker's age.
He was Drew Crocker's age.
Okay.
And I can tell you this because in 81 I was in 8th grade, and unfortunately, he made the state finals on the team, and he and Drew, I believe, were doubles partners.
Yes.
That's right. And I guess it was somewhere that year, I don't know if it was after the Tennessees or whatever, he had the car accident, which, real shame, obviously tragedy. He was paralyzed, and so that was the end of his tennis career. But I remember the next year, they were supposed to play together in 82 when I was a freshman, or they would have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure they played together the year before, but maybe he played with Mike Hood, I remember, who was on the team.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. Do you remember who in the team competition, who you played in the finals?
I don't know whether it was Andrews.
That sounds familiar.
Andrews was coached by my old college doubles partner.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they'd come in on these 5-star buses at tournaments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They had the oil money up there. The school district had tapped into that, and yeah.
In fact, Novice Niffin, the Andrews coach and coach from Fort Stockton, would come down here to play us in a round robin, and I would pull New Braunfels in. New Braunfels and I played each other all the time. Andrews and Fort Stockton played together all the time, so we just swapped. And after about the third year of them coming and doing this, Molly says, "You need to come out to Andrews sometime."
That's a drive.
Well, that's where they got here.
Yeah.
I said, "Novice, I just don't have that in my budget."
Yeah.
He looks at me, "What? You don't have money just to go to Andrews with your team?" "No, we have concession stands at our tournaments, so we have enough money to buy warm-ups
Yeah.
about every 2 or 3 years."
Yeah.
He says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that." I said, "Oh yeah, first thing I was told was, this is your budget. Do not go over it." And Bobby says, when I took over the tennis, and every time I turned my budget in, they said, "Put down what you want, but make sure you spend it all."
Wow. Yeah, that sounds more like today's rules. That's changed a lot.
He said, we furnished the kids their workout clothes.
Wow, it's like a
Shoes.
college.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Shoes, rackets, tournament clothing.
Wow.
Lodging on the road, all the meals. Well, Novice, I don't know that Novice ever drove a school bus in his life.
Yeah.
You know, he was on one of those big Greyhound-looking
Yeah, it
buses.
was. They had a coach. Yeah, I remember that.
And they had professional driver up there driving them.
That's unbelievable. It's like a college team, like a good college team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, coming in second, I'm sure, was a kind of bitter pill, but that was a great accomplishment.
Yeah. It was amazing. The kids wanted it so badly for Brian. And we won some matches that we weren't supposed to win.
I always remember, coming in the next year as a freshman, and I know you had some good girls that time period, but when I came in, that kind of dipped for a couple of years. And but I remember coming in the boys team and going, "Man, we're loaded," and that's without Brian Reisinger, and he would have been the top player. Which pushes everybody down, which is a huge advantage in these dual matches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our first year in that team competition was pretty new. I think it might have only been the second year, maybe third year. They didn't have like a district team because there weren't enough teams in, at least in 4A, that had enough tennis teams, so they just had a region.
But, that's the way it started out.
Yeah.
Because back then there were a lot of high schools in that classification that just weren't really interested in tennis.
No, yeah.
They didn't have a coach. I was one of the regional vice presidents of the Texas Tennis Coaches Association at the time, and we were putting on regional coaching clinics for these guys who had been assigned the job, like Coach Windebank.
Yeah.
No fault of his
Yeah.
that he didn't know tennis. But anyway, we were having these coaches workshops and teaching them drills they could use for their kids and just some of the basics. And that wasn't extremely well attended, and it was free.
Yeah, it's interesting because the tennis boom happened in the 70s, and I remember, even as a kid, it's like we had a couple of tournaments here. One sponsored by the American Cancer Society.
Oh yeah.
And they were playing all over the county, and the Kerrville Tennis Association was having these big, barbecues, and fundraiser, and we're playing at the high school and at Shriner and Louis Hayes Park and out at Camp Rio Vista, which is where my dad kind of taught me to play with my brother, back in the day. Which way back when, my dad was a camp counselor out there, and they actually had clay courts out there.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, so after that, when he played in state and got his kind of first exposure, then of course Austin, I think the old Caswell Tennis Center was clay up until like the 50s, and the UT courts were clay, and Rio Vista. But anyway, that 70s boom, it's just everybody was playing. So even though some of these smaller towns didn't have a proper tennis coach, there were still some great athletes. And I grew up kind of the very end of that era, when we were all learning to play tennis. And you might play a tournament match out at Rio Vista or some other court out at Hunt, and then 2 hours later you were back here on, 30 minutes away, playing the other side of the county.
Yeah, I was in the middle of all that.
I remember watching you play some tournaments out there in like the 35s out at Rio Vista. In fact, I think you played my dad a time or two out there.
Yeah, I'm talking about the big tournaments. I was at the desk.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, they had to have somebody who knew what they were doing.
Talk about something that'll drive you crazy.
Oh, yeah, and throw in, getting thrown off schedule and rain delays and the whole 9 yards and having a phone call to somebody out there finding out what the schedule. Yeah, I can only
with
imagine.
no cell phones.
With no cell phones, I could only imagine. I started playing, I guess, tournaments as about 10 during that time, and the only other kid my age who played here was, of course, Russ's brother, Matt Angell. We were in the same grade.
I remember y'all playing junior tournaments at
We
HEB.
did. Yeah, we did. We played a lot together. I think HEB was built. See, they redid the high school courts, I think, in 80, maybe something like that, 81, and HEB was built a year later, I think, but roughly the same time frame. But yeah, when we were younger, before we got in high school, we were, that didn't exist, so we were playing all over the place. But anyway, yeah, the next year, kind of bringing that full circle, we played in the team competition, which they put, if I remember correctly, kind of early March time frame. So you didn't have much time to prepare. Mm-hmm. Back then, I think most of the kids were just playing tennis, maybe one other sport or something in the off season. But, you're coming out of winter, and then boom, you're right in there. And then I remember that first year we played, because it was a region, and man, that thing was tough because it was before some of this realignment, and Austin Westlake was here. And, they had some real players.
I remember that tournament well.
I do too. New Braunfels was here. Of course, that's a huge tennis town. Georgetown was here.
Heights.
Alamo Heights. And then the best of them all in my era for several years was Taylor. Yeah. And so there were only like 5 schools, and I think if I remember correctly, we did like a round robin thing, or started out that way. And yeah, we didn't fare too well. We were competitive, but the competition was so tough. Yeah, we didn't make it out of that.
If I had not had a team in that tournament, I would have defaulted Westlake High School.
Really?
Yes.
Because?
We had gotten a rain that night.
I remember that. I remember that.
It was a beautiful first day, and then a norther blew in.
Yep.
And got rain that night.
I remember squeegeeing the next day.
Well,
that was at our courts. Yeah.
The Westlake coach shows up and wants to know what the schedule's going to be. And I said, well, as soon as we get these courts dried off, we're going to start. He said, okay. He said, some of my kids haven't had breakfast yet. I'm taking them to eat. So I don't even remember which team they were playing. But I said, you need to be here and help. You were supposed to be here 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
He said, we'll be back.
We'll be back after the courts are dry.
Exactly. Those Westlake kids didn't know.
Yeah, and that squeegeeing was no fun.
No.
And with the courts were really, you got a big dump. That took a while. I mean, it could take an hour and a half, 2 hours by the time everything dried out. And I remember even then they kind of didn't, there were some issues with, those courts are really nice, but the substrate under him was not.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, they fell apart in a couple of years. Yeah, so there were huge divots or
swimming pools.
Yeah, swimming pools in there, and boy, that just, you needed a helicopter to dry those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't know about that, or you'd probably told me I'd forgotten. But
you talk about helicopter.
Yeah.
We played. This was early on in my coaching. We played a tournament in Georgetown.
Yeah.
And their country club, can't remember the name of it now, Serenata, was the tournament headquarters. They had like 8 courts out there. And it was very close to the municipal airport. And they got rain like crazy the night before. So I show up with my kids ready to do battle. Grab those squeegees and let's get after it. And talk to the Georgetown coach, who was the tournament director. He says, we won't have to squeegee the courts. I look out there and I said, we just going to wait for the sun to dry them? No. I don't know what the kid's name was. His father has a helicopter. He's getting it warmed up over there next door right now. He came over and hovered over those. And
I've seen him do it at pro tournaments. So, yeah, I remember coming out of the 82 team tournament. We were competitive, but our girls were down. Remember, we had one girl who was a good player, Lynn Glaze. Mm-hmm. But there was a Janelle Gambrell played, and then there was pretty good drop-off after that. And again, it was combined, and I think Taylor probably won the state championship because they had a great girls team and a really good boys team. And as a freshman, I think I was playing number 3 during that and kind of alternated with another kid, Courtney Allen. But I remember the top players that year, so Brian Ricing obviously wasn't playing because of his injury, but Drew Crocker, Andrew James, myself, Courtney Allen, and we switched around a lot. Courtney was an excellent athlete. Matt Angell, of course, great player. Steven Schmierbeck, Mike Miller.
Yep.
And there might have even been 1 or 2 others. I mean, we ran about 8 or 9 deep. It was incredible.
Yeah.
We
did well in
and that was without
tennis.
Brian. Yeah.
Yeah. We did really good in team tennis because of our depth.
Yeah. I'm not sure those first 2 years, again, they combined the scores, but I don't think we ever lost a boys match if you just looked at the boys tallies. And I know you had us play some good teams, but I don't think we did. And I think for the first year or two, there was a big tournament in San Antonio, the Texas Schools Tourney.
Oh, yeah. We always went to that.
Yeah, and they had a freshman division, and Matt and I didn't play a lot together. We played as kids until our senior year, and may get into that in a minute. But we won that as freshmen. We played really well, and I think and Drew and Andrew played that, and there was competition all over the state. I think at all levels, 4A and 5A, and that's what I remember watching. And you can tell the story, but I think Drew was going to play with Brian. Obviously, that couldn't happen, and so you paired him up with Andrew, and I got to watch under those guys, and I'll never forget the matches they played. And to this day, and of course, things have changed and all that, but for that period of time, I've never seen better doubles played. Those guys were such incredible players, and they played so well together, and they had great competition to play against. Some of the matches I got to see, and as a kid still learning the game, it was just incredible. The flow, serving and volleying and poaching and going back overheads and lobbing and coming back in. I mean, it was amazing. And they were still using wood rackets or some of the metal. Graphite was just coming in, but there was still some power in there. They weren't patting the ball around. I never wanted to miss a match watching those guys.
Drew may have had the hardest serve of any of my high school players.
Really? I remember him in juniors because when he was playing like 14, he was built like a 16, 17-year-old and just crushing the ball. Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember in a tournament he played Kevin Brown, who was a year older than me, and I used to play as a junior. He ended up playing Division I. And I remember a couple of times he just waxed him, just wiped him off the court.
Well, Drew had quite a serve.
Yeah. And then Andrew was kind of an unknown. I hadn't seen him play a lot as a junior, and I guess he just flowered. I mean...
Yeah. Oh. Andrew was something else. I don't know whether it was maybe his sophomore year or freshman year or whatever. I think I had him in singles. I'm not sure. But anyway, we were getting ready to have our tournament, which was just before district. And it happened to hit on spring break.
The Tivy Invitational, yeah.
It happened to hit on spring break that year. Yeah. Our school district moved that spring break around liberally back in those days.
Yeah.
You never knew what to expect.
Yeah.
And I told my kids, hey, usually it was the New Braunfels tournament that was the last one. Mm-hmm. But I always told them, if you don't make this last tournament before district, I'm not going to play you in district. And Andrew, before all that starts, he comes up to me and says, Coach, I'm not going to be able to make the Tivy tournament. I said, what's going on? He said, my family's going skiing in
that's right. Yeah.
Colorado or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I hate to hear that. But you know what I said beginning of school? If you don't make this last warm-up tournament, you don't play district. And well, Coach, this might be our only chance to get together as a family and to do something like this, just to go skiing. I'm thinking, yeah, could do it any weekend you wanted to, just fly up and ski and come back.
Yeah, I think they were pretty well to do.
Yeah, I don't think money was the object here.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't remember how that turned out. I think he ended up not playing varsity that year.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
But he he was something else.
Yeah. No, I guess I had started to see him play like maybe the year before I got in high school, but Drew had always been the best player at his age, but I remember as a freshman coming in, Andrew really flowered, and to this day, he might be maybe the most beautiful player I've ever seen play, just in terms of smooth, everything perfect, timing. I think he had sort of kind of copied John McEnroe's serve a little bit. He'd stand sideways, but it was his own version of it. It was just a beautiful delivery. You could not read it, and he could hit every serve. He could bang it down the middle. He had maybe the best cut I've ever seen out in the deuce court, and then he could hit a nasty kick out in the out court, and it was just amazing. Had this just picture perfect backhand, both cut and he could roll over it. This really tight forehand, simple swing. Guy I used to play with in Austin, who was the head pro at Caswell, which was the big tennis in Austin, and
that's where my state tournament was played in high school.
Yeah, right. Yeah, my dad used to tell me, and so that's where I think they played the first round or two before going to the UT courts. But anyway, yeah, Caswell was the big thing, and this guy was the head pro there, and starting like late '80s and through the early mid '90s, and was the best player in all of Austin outside of the university players.
Yeah.
Chris Schoenfeld was his name, and I remember one of those summers in high school, I saw him play Andrew in the Kerrville summer tournament. I think Lee Jennings played on at the Tivy courts. That was the best junior match I've ever seen. And to this day, I haven't seen him in a couple of years now, Chris Schoenfeld, he played for years, all these tournaments, all over the state, and I'll kind of mention something. He goes, I'll never forget that match, Andrew James. He goes, that was the best player I ever played in this whole area during high school. He goes, I think Schoenfeld won it, but it was a tough match. He either went 3 sets or like 2 tiebreakers, and just, yeah. So between him and Drew, who's such a great athlete, they were a team.
Drew got me in trouble with other coaches.
Yeah?
When he came to Tivy as a freshman,
Yeah.
he got me in trouble with the football and basketball coaches.
Oh, yeah.
Because Drew had, I think he had quarterbacked the junior high team.
Okay.
Was the shot maker on the basketball court, and he comes to Tivy and he signs up straight tennis.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, that didn't go over well.
What are you doing recruiting, Jerry? Yeah. I didn't recruit, I promise.
So that I think their first year together, they were both juniors. They made the state tournament, right? And I didn't get to see them play. They won regionals, which I don't know if that was maybe not a surprise to you. Did you put them together?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the reason I asked that is because I remember when they were playing, the challenge matches, the ladder matches, but they had some knockdown dragouts, and that didn't go over well, whoever lost.
Especially if it's Andrew.
Yeah, okay. Their senior year, I think they kept splitting matches. It was almost always 3 sets. I think you finally had them stop playing, right? Because it just...
I hadn't thought about that, but I think I did.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to.
There's no, yeah.
You're a doubles team.
Yeah.
So
I had something I think a little similar happen to me my last year. But anyway, yeah. So they got to region as juniors and they won it, right? And then went to the state tournament, and they had like 3 rounds, all knockdown dragouts.
Oh yeah.
I think they played one of those Georgetown teams that we had played in the team tournament.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And I know one of the teams they beat was the team from Brownwood. I think their name was Barton and Neighbors, if I remember correctly.
That sounds familiar.
And then they got to the finals. I think it was against Grapevine up in Dallas. And I wasn't there, but if I remember correctly, I think they lost in 3 sets in the finals.
Their
junior year.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were really close to winning it then.
It's amazing, particularly in boys doubles state meet, how close those 4 quarterfinal matches are. Normally, those 4 quarterfinal matches in most other events, singles and girls doubles, you've got 3 or 4 teams that pretty much stand out over the rest.
Yeah.
But so often, you get to state meet and you watch this team, watch that team, and you think, any of these guys can win state.
And that was kind of when I saw that in the team competition earlier. You know, when you had Westlake and Georgetown and Taylor and Tivy and Alamo Heights. I mean, it's like there were tons of good teams, 7 or 8 like really good teams. I remember I think I was playing like 3 singles. I played a guy in obviously it would have been the same guy from Taylor, 3. He was a couple years older than me. I think his name was Vlado Ruzica, and he plays in Austin now. Really good player. And he wasn't even one of their doubles players. They had another doubles team was better than he was. I lost to him, and anyway, so I just remember they had so many great matches because there were so many competitive teams. Yeah, then the next year, things. I think the classification changed. That would have been 82. The next year, 83. I think Westlake and maybe Georgetown or whatever, they had moved into the upper division, which back then was 5A. But then there were some other teams that moved in. I remember, Mercedes?
Oh, gosh. Mercedes, we met up with several times over the years in regional.
Yes. Well, I remember the first time, I think it was the first time, because I don't think in the 70s you were playing against them, right? But they came up to the team competition or something we were hosting the next year. And I'll never forget this. Our kids are all, these are kids from the Valley, and a lot of them are poor kids. They didn't grow up in so-called tennis culture. I don't even mean country club, but just, and they're coming out wearing, just tattered T-shirts and rock concert T-shirts, and some of them are still using, by that time, rackets are getting a little more modernized, beat-up rackets and, old shoes. We're all kind of laughing. That stopped in a hurry once the matches started.
Yeah.
I don't know who that coach was, but
I'm trying to think. It's a very, very popular name down in the Valley.
Yeah,
it slipped my mind now,
anyway,
but
he had 2 fine players, and they pushed you and Andrew. Yeah, there were some great a year later, a year later, I played one of them in singles at the team tournament, the lefty. Yeah, they had a lefty, and Mary Andrew had another incredible singles match with this other kid. It was a big top spinner, and they had some battles. I think each of them kind of won 1 or 2, going deep in the 3rd set. And then there was another team from Laredo Martin, and I think that was maybe the last year of the Texas Schools tourney. Drew and Andrew won that, I think, and I remember you saying that was the best match they had ever played.
Yeah,
and the match was just incredible. I'd seen they played them before, maybe beat them or 3 sets or lost to them. They were a 5A school, and I think they beat them like 6-0 in the 3rd set in the Texas Schools tourney. And at that point, it almost looked like, I wouldn't say they were shoe-in because you're never a shoe-in, but it didn't seem like anyone was going to beat them that second year.
Well, that second year in the finals, they were beaten by Brownwood.
I was there.
And we had beaten, Crocker and James had beaten Brownwood.
The previous year.
In team tennis.
Yeah, okay.
At the Tivy tournament, and I think the Texas Schools tournament.
Yeah, I knew they knew him well.
And
And a lot of the same teams were there the year before, but Drew and Andrew took care of business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you had to be pretty confident going into the finals.
Well, this is a side story. Do you know how we got to Austin?
No.
They wanted to go in my 55 Bel Air.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw a photo of it over here. Right. I do remember that. Yeah.
I said, guys, there's no air conditioning.
Yeah.
That's all right. We'll roll the windows down.
Yeah, that was a cool ride.
And we got there, and when we went to the courts the next morning, that night it had poured rain in Austin. Streets were flooded.
This is before the quarterfinal, the first round?
Yes, before the first round.
Okay.
And we waded through it. I dealt with the UIL half my life.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was impossible to play, I knew you better be there and checking in.
Oh, yeah. You didn't mess around with that. Yeah.
And we were there early, one of the very first teams, complete with windshield wipers that go.
Yeah.
But anyway, one team showed up like 20 or 30 minutes late.
Wow.
You're out of here. Well, we had trouble with the water.
Yeah.
You didn't know it rained the night before?
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to be here.
Yeah.
And I thought, dang.
Wow.
Kids that have worked all year to make it to state meet, and they're defaulting.
Wow.
And I don't know where that was, singles, doubles, whatever. But I remember somebody being defaulted, even though we didn't start playing till noon.
Yeah, right. You had to check in.
We were checking in at 8:30.
Yeah.
And they didn't check in till 9, so they were defaulted, even though we couldn't play for another 3 hours.
Was the whole tournament? Because I only went for the. I think you sometimes would take an alternate. I think Matt went the previous year, and I don't know if I went the next year just as spectator. But anyway, I just went to the finals match, and I know it was at the UT courts. Was the whole tournament there at the UT courts?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
when I should say the varsity
division,
courts.
yeah.
Okay.
That division was at the varsity.
Which was an incredible environment because it was right behind, literally on the south end of the end zone of the football stadium, and the state track meet was going on at the same time. And so there was a lot of energy there.
That might be part of why I started tennis. My parents took me to state meet almost every year as a kid. We didn't take regular vacations, but my dad would take a day off, and we would go and we would walk up the steps to Phoenix courts, and watch some tennis, and then go down, go through the gate, get up in the bleachers.
And you could see down in the stadium and the track and
up
hear the
in
crowd.
The old wooden bleachers.
Yes, exactly. And hear the crowd, when something was happening in the track meet. That was,
Oh, intimidating.
Yeah. So, I remember the finals, and I think, interesting, I didn't know at the time, although he's a friend of mine, he's passed away now, but Trey Mallard, Bradshaw, is from Junction. They were playing on the 2A finals 2 courts down.
Oh, heck.
And they won it. But, I was just focused on watching Drew and Andrew. And I think, they split the first 2 sets, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, it's doubles. Happens a lot. Good, like you said. And then, the third set kind of...
Well, Drew and Andrew played great. But one of those Brownwood kids got so far up in a tree they couldn't shake him out.
I remember that.
I mean, anything he hit was a winner.
And I particularly remember his, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, not much, with an old wood racket, I think he was using a Wilson Advantage, he was hitting 120 mile an hour bombs. And, as good an athlete as Drew was, I remember watching him whiff a couple. Just, I mean, no conscience.
Well, this Brownwood kid, all I could do.
I think it was Barton, if I remember correctly.
All I could do when they came off the court after that third set is say, guys, you played a great match.
Yeah.
You met up with a team that, for whatever reason, played the very best match of their lives.
Yeah, they did.
I mean,
and he didn't
that
start.
one kid, he could be at the net, and you'd have a put away right at his chest. And he not only would get a racket on it, he'd get a racket on it for a winner.
Yeah.
Things like that. Or you lob over him. He doesn't go back there and hit it back defensively. He goes back there and just takes a swing at it.
Crushes it.
Just
Yeah.
ridiculous stuff.
I remember, and I think particularly in the third set, he just got on fire.
Yeah. The first two sets, it was a good even match.
Yeah.
But that third set.
I think, if I remember correctly, it was either answer or no. I think they had gotten up a break early in the third, and they just couldn't because of the way he was playing. The other player was a good player, but just doing his normal, which was your partner doing that more than enough. And I think they got up a break, and then I think, they just weren't able to get a break point. And they finally got one deep in the third. And I remember they played this point, and Andrew played the backhand. I remember he hit this just perfect passing shot down, like came over it, went right by the guy at the net, down the line, and I swear it missed by that much in the eye. I mean, a half inch or less. I mean, you could not hit it perfect. Everybody thought it was in, and they didn't hook him. I mean, I think it was just out. And you kind of knew right then, it's like, man, that was the chance. And that was a heartbreak. It kind of felt like if they broke, that kid would probably start to come down a little bit because you can't keep that up, for too long. That must have been painful for you, not to mention them, obviously, but...
Yeah, well...
You've been in the finals now, what, half a dozen times or more?
I really felt snake bit.
How could you not? I didn't progress as much that year, and I remember Courtney Allen was a better player than I was, and I was playing 4, even 5 sometimes. But I remember probably the most fun I ever had playing tennis was that year. I think they might have switched. They switched the format up in the team. I don't remember how, but anyway, if there was a district or they just threw everybody into a state tournament, that may be what it was. Or maybe we played a district and then they went right to the state. And there were 16 teams there. And so, or maybe we got through the region because it was easier. Georgetown was out, and I think New Braunfels maybe had gone 5A, and Westlake was out. But we played at Nukes, if you remember that. And I don't remember who we played first round. Pretty good team. And, that whole year, even the year before a whole year, the blueprint was, we were even better that year because no one had graduated. It was Drew and Andrew and Courtney and, Matt and myself and, Steven Schmierbeck and Mike Miller, and there were one or two others, coming up on the tail end of that. And, we couldn't all play. You had to rotate some of us in and out, to be fair and depend on ladder matches and all that. But it was almost, when we got to that level of competition, it was usually, girls would eke out maybe a couple of matches out of the 9, because I think it was 6 singles, 3 doubles, and the boys, it was always like straight 9-0. I mean, maybe we'd lose 1 match or 2 match or whatever, but then the competition got tougher. And I remember the second round of that, I think it would have been the quarterfinals. We played Friendswood. They were tough. And the balanced team, really good girls team, also a really good boys team. And, bless her heart, the girls team, they were just outmatched. I think Janelle Gambrell's playing 1, and she's playing against some, girl that's ranked 7 in the state or something, whatever it is. These kids are growing up in and around Houston. But we had one girl who was really scrappy. Remember Amy Benson?
Mm-hmm.
And she somehow clawed her way and I won a match. I think the boys, we went on, if I remember correctly, you do doubles of boys and singles girls and switch them right after that. So I think
depending on how many courts.
Depending on how many courts are available.
If you got
right
9 courts, that's how you do it.
That's how you do it. And so I think we went on doubles first. I think I did play with Matt in that one. I think we were playing like 3 doubles, but we won ours. Pretty not easy match. And Courtney and Mike, I think were playing. I think they were playing number 2. And then about the time we were coming off, the girls were getting off scene. I remember Drew and Angell were having a battle against these kids from Friendswood. And I think it was like his 3rd set, but it might have been in no ad. I remember that. And it was like a critical point. And I think Drew crushed some second serve on match point. He just deep into the backhand corner, and I think it was a tiebreaker, and the kid couldn't handle it. So, we're holding form, and then we get all the singles on there, and it was just the craziest thing. Steven Schmierbeck was playing this kid, I think, at line 6, and the kid was just better than him. But somehow Steven won the first set 7-5. I think the kid got the score wrong serving. And Steven kind of didn't say that. He was looking up at us, and the kid just kept playing and called game and gave him the balls back. And so he ended up somehow winning the second set. And then Courtney Allen was up. I think Matt might have been playing 6 singles, and Mike had a tough match, won like 5-5. Courtney Allen got it down 4-0 in the 3rd set. Won 6 games in a row. And we had to win it because we were behind on sets, because several of these boys matches, if you ended up tying 9-9, they counted sets. And so we had split some sets. So if we got in a tie, we weren't winning it, because none of the girls other than Amy Benson winning that match. And so I don't know, you tended to put me on last, and I'm playing this kid. He's a pretty good player. I think I was playing at 4. And so it's we're up 9-8, I guess, but if it goes tie, we're going to lose on sets. And so I'm playing this kid, and I win the first set pretty handily. All the other matches have cleared off now. I'm on the end court. Everybody's up in the grass above on the little knoll watching. And this kid, just like that Barton kid, he went into his zone. And I think I was up 5-2, 5-3 in the second, and had a couple match points, got a little nervous, of course. But he started, this was back in the Western forehand, he started running around and just crushing forehands. Just ending the point. Back then, you're just trying to play the guy's backhand, maybe get to the net, force him to hit a passing shot. That was my game anyway. And I lost that set, and I was devastated. I'll never forget that. You remember talking to me over in the side after that? All the kids are up here, whether we're going to go to the next round. It's now down on this one set. I just blown 2 match points. I'll never forget what you told me, Coach. I've told this story to a few people. You came over to me, and, I got my head down because I took losses hard. I wasn't going to give up, of course, but I'm like, I just blew it. I had the whole thing, 2 match points. This kid's on fire now. Fortunately, we had a 5 to 10 minute break. And you sat me down, and you goes, I don't even think he gave me any strategy. He might have told me one thing, move your feet or something. Easy to do. But you said to me, you go, I don't want you to worry. You said, I wouldn't want any other player out there right now. You're the one player I would want out there. And I don't know if you've ever told a lie, Coach, but I thought for sure that moment you were telling me one.
No, if I said it was coming from the heart.
And I said to you, I said, Coach, what? I said, you got Drew and Andrew. You go, nope. I want you in this spot. You're the one guy that I would want out here. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I thought that. And then I looked at you and you were telling the truth. And that really kind of scared me. And I was like, well, I guess if he believes it, I got to sort of believe it. But that just calmed me down. And I went back out there, and kids started off again really well, 3rd set, but I held serve a couple times, and then he started to drop off. And I think you were like, just keep moving your feet, make him stay at that level. And he dropped off, missed some balls, and I ended up winning 3rd set pretty handily. And I remember all the kids came rushing out on the court. And we lost the next round, I think, to Taylor because they were such a great team. But I'll never forget that. And I've told that story, Coach, to a couple of people I knew who were well-known or well-respected tennis coaches. One guy who worked for Cliff Drysdale, the great South African player out at Lakeway. And he told me, he goes, that's one of the finest pieces of coaching he's ever heard, match coaching. He told me that. So wanted to thank you for that. So we're recording this, and so I wanted to get that down. But yeah, that was amazing. And we played tough the next round, but Taylor was just a better team.
Yeah. And
then the next year, let's see. So I had decided my freshman year, I guess, we had so many good players. I played singles. I think I got third in district my freshman year. And then the next 2 years, I played singles as well because I thought, I love doubles, but I just like singles too. And we had so many doubles players. I certainly wasn't gonna knock off Drew and Andrew in doubles. So, but then we had a bunch of things. That kid moved into Fredericksburg. If you remember that Baker kid.
Yes.
Yeah, and I beat him twice during the non-district. Close matches. But 2 years in a row he got me. And he was a better player, a little better athlete, 1 year older, a little stronger. But that second year, I remember I played him, and I thought for sure, because I had a great year my junior year, played really well. Matt Angell and Courtney Allen were playing doubles, and they were a really good team. They went to regionals. But I played maybe the worst match I've ever played in terms of junior tennis in the district semifinal. Because we had Kevin Brown moved in out of Nukes, moved into our district, which that happened a couple of times. So I got put on the other side.
It got worse after you left.
Did it? Okay. Yeah, we had another kid my senior year but I just laid a total egg. I lost must have been 45 minutes to that Baker kid, 2-1 or something. I was just crushed. And I thought, man, I'm never going to get out of district. And I think Matt and Courtney went to regional that year, and I think had a real chance of getting out of there. I think they lost an Alamo Heights team or somebody that I think they probably could have beaten. They just didn't have a great match.
Yeah. Courtney and Matt won district in '84.
Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten that. Yeah. Yeah, and you had high hopes for them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Mercedes team, I don't know if they won state that year, but this was the year after Drew and Andrews, is '84. I think that year we had some young girls come in who were solid players, really talented players, good athletes. But the depth on the boys wasn't what it was. Then the next year, I remember after I lost district and, Matt had lost region, we were talking, and it's we just kind of met up instantly. It's you know what? We got 1 year left. We grew up together. We played junior tournaments. We had just had a thing. We just always had played great. I don't know why we hadn't played before together in previous years. Probably me because I wanted to play singles. But we just no, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and we're going to go all in. And I kind of took a break that summer, I think after losing that match, that really kind of got to me. And I've been playing junior tennis my whole, all the summers, and I just kind of wanted to go in that year with the fresh thing. But I think he had qualified. He went to Nukes, and he played in Europe that summer, which really helped him because I'd probably been a little better in competition than he had, but that really upped his game. And so by the time we started our senior year, we were, pretty much just neck and neck. And we played on challenge matches, split our ladder 1 and 2. We did have one other good player come up, Billy Finch. Mm-hmm. Billy had the best return I've ever played with in junior tennis. Just had incredible hands. Wasn't as good overall athlete and movement, but great reflexes, back of the court. But Matt and I just decided we were going all in, and we weren't going for second place, which is really kind of ludicrous because I hadn't even been to region. And he had gotten there, but we hadn't been in the state tournament. We didn't know any better. But we kind of knew, those previous years, those guys had graduated. We knew there were some good teams, but we were just kind of why not us? And there was some up and downs in there, but I knew we were good in the fall. We started playing, played a few dual matches, did well. And Drew was at Schreiner then, and Mike Miller was at Schreiner. And we played them several times in practice, and we did well. I don't know if we won every time, but we won the lion's share. And I already knew, but that just confirmed that we had what it took.
That's, something clicked with y'all that just never seen anything quite like it. Of course, of all of my years of coaching, I've never had two kids that specifically set that goal and daily work towards it, not just on the court. But I know what was going on before school and after school, after a regular workout. You guys earned that state championship. No one has dedicated themselves as totally as you and Wayne.
Well, I have a story about that you told us, another one I remember. So I appreciate, we weren't going to be outworked. That was the one thing. We knew that we had just our, this word's overused, some cliche, but we had good chemistry. In fact, we had great chemistry. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, I know probably people were the time comparing us, Drew and Andrew, whatever. They were the best doubles team I'd ever seen match in, match out. They just for 2 years, not putting us in that category. But what we did have, we were a feast or famine. We could have some terrible matches. We lost a dual match to Mason that year. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was a pro set, just terrible. But the opposite was also true. When we were on, we were on. And I knew that in the fall when we were playing, I went and played basketball. I love basketball, but also I knew it'd get me in good shape. And he went off, I think that was over summer or maybe year before Christmas anyway. He qualified that Nukes thing. But when we came out in the spring in basketball, we were every day. We had the team competition pretty quick. We didn't have a lot of time to prepare for that. And we did okay, but again, we didn't have the depth on the boys, and we had a young, talented, but young girls team. One of the challenges was finding competition, which you helped us with, but we do our practice and we go over to HEB, and Lee Jennings would drill us, and then we started working with Rick Perry, and he really helped me because I had some fundamental flaws in my game. Matt, not so much. Matt was a beautiful player. But he helped me, and we would drill, and then we just were focusing only on doubles. I think we had split our dual matches. I think I finally came to you after basketball. I said, Coach, you want me playing singles or doubles? Because I can't. I just hated losing. You're like, no, it's okay. We're done with the challenge matches. And Matt had gone through kind of a rough spell, and I think he beat me in the last one, which actually I think was good for him because he'd gone through a rough patch. He might have even lost to Billy Finch one time, one of the latter matches, but he got back. And we were training like 3 hours every day pretty much, which at the time that was a lot for, young kids, and trying to watch what we eat, and running afterwards, and, doing stretching, whatever, everything we could do. And, but I think we didn't play a lot of tournaments that year. And, I think after the team regionals, we played the Tivy Invitational, and then we found out who our competition was.
Who would that be?
Yeah. Well, there was a couple of them, and the first ones were the kids from Uvalde. You remember them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't terribly concerned about them.
Well, I wasn't either. I had seen them play in junior. They were these kids. It's funny, these kids in Texas, you obviously grew up in sort of Ranch Town Junction. It's amazing how many great players would come out of these small towns.
Yeah.
Oasis Canyon, Camp Wood over there at Swint Friday kid. And then Uvalde had Kevin Brown. And I forget the guy, it was a year or two, Will Schutte, who was a fine player. I think he might have played at TCU.
Well, Will had a brother, Gary.
Did he?
Older than him, that was a great player.
Wow. Yeah, and so these two Uvalde kids were like, and they played other sports. I think one of them, Tate, he was a football quarterback, and I think they both played basketball. Mike Beasley was the other one. But I'd seen them in some tournaments. They didn't play as much because they were multi-sport kids, but I knew they were good. And Matt had played with Andy Harris, who's the brother-in-law of Rick Perry. And they had beat Matt and Andy, but I felt like we could beat them. And I think we played them in the semifinals of the Tivy Invitational, and we won that in straight sets. But, it was a good match. I mean, it was a tough match. They were very worthy opponents. And then in the final, we played these two kids, Graff and Cantu.
Where were they from?
Pearsall. Yeah.
Yep. Had a very good close match.
Oh, yeah.
And Pearsall came out on top.
They did. So 2 years before in the summer, a year and a half before, and I had seen Graff. We had played him in juniors on and off for a year, and I think I'd usually beat him if he was a year younger than me.
Oh, did I mention they were state champions?
They had won 3A the year before and moved up.
Yep.
The summer before they did that, we played them. Matt and I played a bunch of tournaments that summer. That whole Highway 80 thing, we played like 5 or 6 tournaments that summer. Did really well. And the last tournament, it was every weekend. It's hot. We were starting to get a little tired. We played the Alamo City Open, and we played them in the finals. I think we either won or got to the finals of every tournament that summer. And we played them in the finals. And, thought we'd beat him. I knew Graff. I didn't know this Cantu kid, but he was one of these kids like Drew, kind of grew early. Fantastic athlete. I think later on became coach of Ingram and coached their tennis team. Had just a laser forehand, big serve. Anyway, and we thought we'd beat them in Alamo City, and they won. We didn't play our best match. They won the first set. Second set, we had all kinds of chances to win the second set. They won a tiebreaker like 12-10, 10-8. We had several set points, couldn't win it. We were pretty upset we lost that. We thought we were the better team. And here we go a year and a half later. Now we're playing them in Tivy Invitational. Tough first set. We had a set point. I remember I got a high volley at the net on our set point, and I swung at it and missed it. Hit it out, hit it long. Actually, I think I hit the net. I swung at it and framed it, hit the net. Lost that set, lost the next set, 7-5 something, and what's going on with these guys? We lost to them twice now. And then, we were training after that, and we were more determined. I think I got a little injury, hurt my back. And then do you remember we went to Uvalde tournament? And we made a big mistake. We got overconfident. And those Uvalde kids, Beasley and Tate, they gave us a butt whipping. I think they beat us 2-1, Coach.
Oh, really?
It was embarrassing. And I was injured. I couldn't serve, really. I had a back injury, upper back here. But no excuses. They were ready for us. Because if you recall, Matt and I are really big about closing the net and finishing the point. We did all kinds of that close contact drill, and they were ready, and they had perfected the lob volley in the 2 weeks. And they lobbed us time and time again and caught us leaning too far forward. I remember coming to school the next day, and Trey Mallard was sitting next to me, and he wrote the score down. He goes, I won't use all the words he probably used, but he said, 6,261. He goes, do you know what that number is? He goes, that's not just a number, that's a butt whipping. That made me mad. So then Easter happened, and we went and trained. We went to Houston, and we trained with Russ Angell, who was, I think, the head pro at maybe Kingwood Country Club.
I think Kingwood at that time.
Okay. And we went out there. I remember the first afternoon, we had 3 or 4 days out there, and we're like, he had clay courts. We're out there hitting on clay. And he's like, what are you guys doing? You're not playing singles. You're not playing on clay. Get off of there. He yanked us off.
That would be Russ.
Yeah, and he put us through the paces the next 3 days. And he had some kids he was coaching, 5A kids who played doubles. And I remember he really the one thing we had is, and especially me, but actually both of us, we get too down on ourselves. He's like, you guys gotta talk each other up. I mean, you got to get motivated. You got to winner, miss shot. He's like, hey, next point, fist pump. You see us all the time now. It's tennis psychology, Bryan brothers, right? We didn't chest bump, but that's basically what he was saying.
Yeah.
And he rearranged our thinking on that, and we took that to heart. And I remember the other thing was that, and this was key. We wouldn't have won it without this. I had always played the backhand side, and Matt always played the forehand. And the thinking was he had much better forehand than I did, but I was kind of probably more the clutch player. And so it was like, well, I'll take the ad points, and I could just chip a backhand in, get it low. But he on the backhand side, he had switched to a one-hander a couple years before, and I had a beautiful backhand. But on the deuce court, that inside-out slice, he just kind of struggled with. Just wasn't his shot. But for me, that was just a natural shot. That inside-out backhand, still maybe my best shot I have in all my repertoire. But we didn't want to change. Finally, Russ like, we flip-flopped a couple times. He goes, you have to decide right now. And I thought about it, and he was like, do what you're best at. And I was like, you know what? I got to trust my partner. Put him on the backhand side. And we made that switch, and it helped my forehand because I was still kind of a continental grip, shifted over a little bit. But, that inside out is kind of hard for a continental player. So on the forehand side, I could really roll over it, and that just made a big difference. And we came back, had a couple of hard weeks of practice, and, we're real nervous at district because I hadn't even been out of it, but we ended up winning that pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then the real training started, because it seemed like a lot. It was almost like 2 or 3 weeks between district and regional. It was like this big gap because I think regional wasn't until the end of the month or beginning of May. And we played every day. I don't think we took a day off. Maybe on the weekend on Sunday we might just hit for 30 minutes, but we weren't going to be outworked. Got in shape and got to regional and played an Alamo Heights team. I think their second team was pretty good. I think the next year they might have won it, I think, actually, or one of the two did. One state actually beat Graf and Cantu the next year in the finals. But we got through that one pretty handily, but, we're nervous. And, of course, Graf and Cantu, because they beat us, they're number 1 seed in region. Here we go again. Same thing for me. I'm in the semifinal. Got to win this match. And we're playing Uvalde again. So, and that was at McFarland. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember warming up that morning. We had a great warm-up. Just an incredible warm-up. And that usually is in a strange way, is a bad omen for me. If I had a great warm-up, I don't know if something went to my head, and if I had a bad warm-up, maybe, I was like, I got to focus more on it. I remember we got off the court warm-up, and I was just, day before, I'd done a lot of self-talk at home, because I knew tomorrow was the day. Because I think we won the first round, went home, and the next 2 rounds, the semifinals and finals, were in one day. And I was like, this is it. This is, your whole junior life, so what you've been preparing for. And so I thought I'd be really nervous, but actually I really wasn't. And we were cracking jokes after our warm-up before we went on court with them. And we went out, and to this day, that's part of the best doubles match I've ever been a part of. Yeah, we just put it on them.
That one wasn't in doubt.
No. And I think the funny thing was we won by the exact same score, 6-2, 6-1, because I remember the next week going to Trey Mallard, and I wrote down that number, 6,261. I said, you know what this is? I said, this isn't just a number, this is a butt whipping. But, I almost felt bad for him because they just didn't know what hit them. Yeah, we just blew through them. Yeah, we were just everything. They couldn't believe what happened because they thought they were going state. The Beasley kid took, I think he had 2 or 3 rackets. He broke both of them over his knee right there. He goes, I'm done with this game. It kind of felt good in a way, but, kind of like, okay, well. And I think you told us at the time, and maybe you tell, but there was another coach watching. Do you remember that? You told us this after the match. He came up to you during the match. He watched a good portion of it, and I think he might have been a college coach out recruiting or scouting. And I think this is what you told us. He said, he had never seen a finer performance from a high school doubles team during that match. I don't know who it was.
I don't remember, but I remember that happening.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think it went to our head because I think we went to lunch. Of course, we've qualified now. But there those guys, Graf and Cantu, regional 5. But we thought we got them this time. We were just on fire. And lo and behold,
almost.
Yeah, almost. We went out and we played, well again.
Oh, you played beautiful tennis. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what have they got to do to beat these guys?
We were just a little off from the morning, though. I think we just lost a little edge. Sometimes when you're playing against the best and you think you got it, you just try a little too much. I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
We just tried for a little too much and we're just missing by a little bit. And lost like 6-5 again or something. So we played these guys 3 times. And usually in doubles, that's not good. You haven't won a set yet. But they were all just like tough sets. So it's like, but I think in a way that was good because, you never like a loss, but we're like, we got more work to do.
After that match, while you were still at the net, gathering your stuff up, is whenever I came out there and looked at you and said, well, guys, are you convinced you can't beat them yet?
Oh, yeah.
And y'all both looked up at me and grinned and said, heck no, Coach, we're getting them at state.
Is that really?
Yes. And I would never have said that to any other kids I ever coached.
Wow.
I would never say, are you convinced you can't beat them yet? But for whatever reason, in my gut, my heart, I knew the work you were putting in. And if anybody was ever going to do it, you were going to do it.
Well, we went back and that loss stuck with us for, a few hours or something. But the next day we're over it because, my dad gave me a hard time till the day he died because he's like, you were never a regional champion. I was. Back when men were men, you had to win that. He never let me forget that. But yeah, we went back and had about 10 days or something to practice again. And, worked as hard as we could. And Rick put us through the paces and, practice, I'm sure, with Lee Jennings a couple times. And yeah, I remember we got to the state tournament the day before and I think practiced at Austin High. Got out that morning, quarterfinals, and played these kids, I think, from Fort Stockton. I don't know if you remember that.
Fort Stockton had some pretty good teams back in then.
Well, I remember we're at the, unfortunately, I don't want to change anything, it all worked out, but they tore down the UT varsity courts that year because they were doing something, extending the football stadium, south end zone, and so they were building the new Pinnock courts, which those aren't there anymore either, but they built a real nice facility. So they put us out the intramural courts, and which we had played junior tennis there. We were familiar with that, and they were pretty quick courts, as I recall. Yeah, those kids from Fort Stockton came out, and I remember they didn't seem particularly good in warm-up. But, of course, they were a 1 seed because they had paired the 1s against the 2s. So you had to respect them. But we were starting the match thinking, well, we think we can take these guys. Within 15 minutes, you remember we're down 4-1. And it might have been 2 breaks. We weren't really doing anything wrong. We weren't playing badly. Doubles can go sometime.
No.
I mean, it's like, I didn't think these guys that good. We'd poach them. It's like, how'd they read? They knew we were going to poach, going right behind us or whatever it was. And I remember sitting there. I think I was about to return serve. And I never forget this. I was sitting there and it's like, well, this is not what we expected, but I was like, I guess if this is where it ends, we've done everything we could do. No regrets. I don't know if it was that or something, but maybe just relax a little bit, probably both of us. Everything changed. We won the next 11 games. I remember Matt was just flying all over the court. He could do.
Yeah.
Jumping, diving at a volley, hitting a winner. These guys' heads like going. Yeah, we won that 6-4, 6-0. And then the next match, we played these kids. I don't know where they were from. Probably a number one team as well. It was a lefty. I played really well in the early part of that match. And Matt, I think the first round probably played a little better than I did. I mean, we both played pretty well, but he played extremely well. And then it was getting kind of hot in the afternoon, and it's just a lot of emotion. But we went through them. I think we won the first set of that one 6-0. Played really well. And that lefty kid, he had this big cut serve. But Matt on the ad court could hit a really good slice and come over it sometimes. And I love returning lefty serves in my backhand, especially on the deuce court, because it's cutting away and I could step into it and cut it off. And we got up, I think, 5-1 in the second set. We won between the first match and the quarterfinals and that semifinal. We won 20 out of 21 games. But then we started getting a little tired, and they broke us once and maybe twice in a row. And all of a sudden, it got to Matt sometimes would do this. He'd get a little shaky, and it got to 5-3, and he was telling me, he's like, I don't feel too good. And he was going to have to serve it out. And that lefty kid was serving, and I told him, I was like, we got a break here. Because if this goes into third, all bets are off.
Yeah.
How it is. Those first two sets are over. And so I think first point, that kid hits my backhand again, and I hit a return, and he in the alley, and he barely gets his racket to it. And then I think they win the next point. Matt missed a return. He's tired. And then it's 15-all, and he serves me again. And I really stepped into it this time, and I hit a clean winner inside out. Slice backhand on that slick court. It just took off. He didn't get a racket on it. And I think it was 15-30, and then he came back to Matt, and I think Matt got a good low return in, and we got the point. And then the last one, the kid came to me because I just crushed his serve twice, and he double faulted. But we were ready to get off that court. The next morning, I remember we woke up, we got up early, 6:30 in the morning, had all our stuff laid out. We wanted everything, nothing, no chances, right? Got ready, went for a run in the morning. And do you remember what happened that morning? We got to the courts. We both felt sick. We're in there. Our stomach wasn't right. We're having to go in the toilet. We're like, what's going on? We knew the story about his brother.
Yeah, that didn't help any.
No. We're like, oh, this can't be happening again. You remember what he told us? We came out of there, and you were just like, hey, guys, relax. He goes, you're fine. And again, this is one of these things, Coach, that you just said the perfect thing. You totally said, I've been here up 10 times this point, and I think you said, every time I've been in this position, my stomach has been just like yours has. Butterflies and all that. Then you told us, you go, this is the first year I haven't. And you said, because you guys have done everything you could possibly do to prepare. You go, I am dead calm and confident about this. And that was the exact thing we needed to hear.
Yeah, well, that was the truth. I mean,
we went out, had a bad warm-up, whatever. That was okay because I knew it was nerves. And I think Matt even got upset with me, pissed. He's like, come on, it's the state finals. Pull your head out. So anyway, we started the match. I remember it started the same way, close. All three of those matches against those guys, I always felt like we just needed a break. Just needed something, right?
And everybody gives you that
Yeah,
much.
right. These guys, they were so tough. They were the mentally toughest team I've ever played, even all through, adults and all that, just in terms of that, at that level. And we got to the first set, and Can 2 kid was serving. And we finally got up couple of break points, 15-40. I'm playing the deuce court. I think he missed his first serve or something. He had a really good kick. He hits a kick, but because I knew it was a second, I was able to run around. I hit a return. It kind of dipped at his feet. Came over it, got some topspin, but he half volleyed it. But I was coming in, but he hit a really good, it's just like always, he hit a really good half volley right at my feet, tied my shoestrings. And I was like, what am I going to do? Because I was hoping he'd pop it up or miss it or, No, I hit it. I framed the ball. Ball pops right up. I see it go right up, right over their heads. Lands inside the baseline about a foot. Couldn't believe, nobody on the court could believe it. I was like, well, we finally got our little break. And it was just this relief. We got a set. Finally, we're in the lead against these guys. And then we kind of let out a sigh, and we went on a roll. We broke them immediately. We were up 2-0, and I think we were like just rolling. And then we made a big mistake. And we might have been up 4-2, or they might have broke us me, but we made a huge mistake, especially against these guys. We got complacent. Broke us right back, broke us again. Next thing you know, it's 6-4, split sets. And I don't remember what you said in the break, but I think you were just like, you guys got this. Just believe in everything you've done. And everybody kind of told us at that point, third time usually something changes, when you're that close.
Yeah.
So I remember we started that third set, and it was nip and tuck. And back then, I don't know if people still say as coaches, but they always said the seventh game. You remember that? The seventh game was crucial. I remember Matt was serving, and man, that was just such a tough game. And he was playing well. I'm trying to help him that, and both of them, because that Cantu kid had just this laser forehand, and he played the deuce court. And Graf had a great backhand, two-handed backhand. He'd hit his flat, kind of like Djokovic would. And man, they just started pounding their returns. And God bless Matt, he's like digging out balls. I'm trying to help him. We had maybe an ad or two early in the game, couldn't close it. And I remember they had 3 or 4 break points. And, a couple of them just barely digging out the point. One I remember in particular, I think Graf and break point hit some great turn. Matt's feet, he popped it half volley, and something happened. I think we switched, and then lob or something, they switched sides. They came in, and Cantu got a look at a forehand, and he just roped one down the line, and it was going past me, and it just caught the tape and didn't go over. We ended up holding, and we were like, okay, now's our time. And next couple of points, maybe 15-all or something, whatever. I remember Matt runs around, forehand, just crushes a forehand inside out, clean winner. A couple points later, we got a break point, and for the first time ever, they cracked. That Graf double faulted. And we had a line judge. I remember that whole match, and they were honest players, and we always tried to call the lines fairly, and kids make mistakes sometimes, but there were some questions on calls. And so they would question, and line judge, we had the umpire, and he kept making mistakes. And it was like, and so it got to a point where if it was close, you had to question it, because if you didn't, they're getting calls reversed. It all evened out in the end, but that added to this whole thing. And so now I got to serve to close it out, and Matt he definitely had a better serve than I did. And man, we had this game, back and forth. I don't know if you remember that, and.
Oh, yeah.
Couple ads.
I knew it wasn't over till it was over.
Yeah, we knew that. We told ourselves that. This is not over. We're not making that mistake again. Had a couple of match points. Couldn't close the deal. They played well. They just would not give us anything.
Well, every time you got just a little edge, I would be sitting there thinking, okay, this is it. And lo and behold, those guys would come out of nowhere and it's their ad instead of our ad now. What happened?
Yeah. They were the epitome of playing better when things got worse.
Yes.
It was surreal. So, yeah, I think I had 2 match points, maybe a third one, got first serve. I didn't double fault. And they just played a great point. Hit one at our feet or whatever, ended up finishing it off on a volley. Then we had to face 2 or 3 break points. We were able to kind of dig those out. And I remember we finally got another match point. I was like, no, this is it. And I remember tossing that ball up, and I was like, I'm coming in. I'm charging in. I am going to get my feet set, step into that thing, and drive that right into him and close on the next ball and hit a pretty good first serve to Graff. And he hits a backhand return, and I'm sitting here, and then something totally unexpected happened because we always told each other what we were doing. And you remember what happened, right? He decided to poach. He hadn't told me. And he moves over, and, it wasn't an easy volley. Maybe 6-8 inches over the net, gets a backhand across the middle, and he kind of had his other hand up there to, like a two-hander, support it. And he just rocketed one, and it went reverse cross court right between Cantu's legs. Never saw it. I was like, what? I don't have to hit a shot? Great! We're state champions? What? Yeah, it was hard to believe.
Yeah. Well, it took some kind of surprise move like that to finish that match.
It did. And he said something during the team competition that year. One of the Alamo Heights players who was a great player. He played singles. He was the best singles player. And he might have won state. I can't remember. Colin Seal. He had done that to us when it was one of the few doubles matches we had lost all year. It was our first match. I just came out of basketball. We hadn't started really practicing yet. We lost a real close match, and he did that as to match point. And Matt remembered that and said, no, in a situation like that, you have to win these. You don't lose these. Mm-hmm. And I was really obviously ecstatic that he did that and had the guts to do it. We finally got him.
Only when it counted.
Only when it counted. I'm here at the sports banquet. Just to wrap up, I think you told everybody, outside of district, they didn't want a tournament the whole rest of their career, except one. It's been 40 years, hard to believe.
I know.
But we couldn't have done it without you. And I told that story again, what you told us before the finals match, to a couple of those coaches. That guy who coached with Drysdale, he's like, that's the best thing I've ever heard. So without question, you're the best match coach I've ever been around.
Well, I don't know. I've been around. I've been up against a few that I wouldn't put myself as the best.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to imagine anybody saying better. And honestly, after that, of course, my dad being a tennis coach, I played for him, and Matt for his brother, didn't get it, and all the stuff his mom particularly had done driving us all tournament. But we felt great for you, and that you had, whatever, 7th time, whatever it was.
I don't know how many.
Yeah, but been a bunch, right?
Yes, a bunch.
You were probably getting to the point it wasn't going to happen, right?
I was beginning to wonder, but
yeah,
y'all convinced me otherwise.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we were sure happy to see you with that. So, did you have any other things? I know you coached for, about another 5 years or something after that?
What year was that? That was
85. Yeah.
4 more years.
Okay.
And I got another boys doubles team to state with Sean and Giles. Eddie Giles is my son-in-law. That was another, every match was split sets. Throughout the tournament.
The regional, everything?
Well, no, throughout the state tournament.
Okay.
All, quarterfinals, all split sets.
Oh,
Maybe one was straight set.
Yeah.
Semifinals was split sets.
The whole draw.
Finals was split sets.
Oh, wow.
Man, I was ready to go to town with these boys, starting their junior year.
Okay.
I knew I could get them enough experience their junior year that if not their junior year, their senior year gonna be tough to beat.
Yeah.
Just before school starts for their junior year, Marcus breaks his leg playing soccer. I mean, breaks the leg.
Yeah.
And while we're in district team competition in the fall, it was moved to the fall, we're playing at HEB. Eddie's got another doubles partner for the team. And he goes up, hits the overhead, and when he comes down, his knee sounded like a giant popping his knuckles.
I never knew this.
It was so loud, play stopped on those other 5 courts to see what was wrong. They were both out their entire junior year. And then they came back, and I don't remember. I think they were semifinalists for me. They won their first match and lost their second.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing, given to lose your whole year like that, and
yeah,
which is a very formative time, as a junior player. It's when you're becoming a man.
Well, I really think, essentially they were as good as the state champions.
Wow.
But so were 2 or 3 other teams particular year. But with another year of experience, I think they'd have been a step above all those kids.
Boy, Coach, you had a lot of close calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 89. That was the end of my coaching.
Courtney Allen, one of his younger brothers, Darren, was a good player, but then the other one, Eric, was a fine player, and I know he made the state tournament.
Yes.
I saw him play a match there and played for UT. I know they've had some other pretty good players after that, but I don't know if they've had anybody that's gone really far.